Everyone at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund wishes we were in Illinois right now with the wall that heals, as we had planned. We know that our in-memory families in Illinois are disappointed that they won't be able to see their honorees' photos on display. But we didn't want to let the opportunity pass to remember our in-memory honorees from Illinois. So we've put together this photo display with our traditional reading of the names. Herbert Abels, Walter Ansek, Ronald Antkovic, Ronald Arndt, Robert Austin, Everett Avery, Lawrence Bamberg, Mike Bartkowiak, David Bean, Gary Besner, John Besterfield, Larry Bilyeu, Kenneth Blair, John Boringer, Arthur Boivin, Gene Bowers. Dennis Brask, John Bredla, John Brozovic, Douglas Buchan, Thomas Burbridge, Thomas Burgess, Robert Burton, Donald Caliendo, Dennis Campbell, Donald Childers, Charles Chrisman, O.V. Clark, Warren Collins, David Conway, Andrew Cook, Domingo Cornelio. Clifton Cornelius Jr., Robert Craycroft, David Kuruk, Merle Crutcher, Howard Cusick, Gary David, Robert Davis Sr., John Dawley, Michael DeCamp, Dennis DeJewel, Raymond DeThorne, Donald Dulsk, Thomas Drassel, Edward Duffy, Edgar Duker, Donald Dumas. Robert Duncan, J.D. Eagle, Barry English, Jack Ferguson, Roy Fewell, Carl Fields, James Fisher, Ralph Flanagan, Roger Ford, Patrick Francis, James Gaynor, John Gibson, Robert Golden, Gary Goodrich, John Gorick, Walter Griffin. Richard Gustafson, Ralph Gwynn, Lawrence Hageen, Virgil Hammond, James Hanson, Donald Havey, Richard Hawkins, Dennis Hickman, Kenneth Hilligoss, Thomas Hockmeyer, Earl Hofstad, John Hogan, Lloyd Hood Jr., James Horvath, Louis Hoskins, Arthur Hotop. Robert Hulskamp, Gary Inskeep, Michael Yakic, Michael Janis, Robert Jenkins, David Johnson, Michael Johnson, Hezekiah Johnson, William Joyner, Garland Jolly, David Jones, John Jones, Keith Jones, John Kaner, Thomas Kaig, Dennis Kennedy. Michael Kessinger, Charles Key, John King, Gerald Kleinberg, Leonard Knotts, Robert Kofed, Gerald Conkle, Thomas Lane, Horst Lang, George Lanter, Kenneth Lauritsen, Philip Lawing, Richard LeGrand, Billy Leach, Louis Litchfield, James Lodgson. David Ludwig, Charles Mack, Paul Malinowski, James Manwaran, Ronald Maple, Richard Markowitz, Ronald Martin, Paul Martinez, Cecil Matthews, Jesse Mathis, Larry Matz, Raymond Maurer, Charles McAnally, James McGinn, Joseph McEwen, James McMaster. Albert McNeil Chambers, Billy McPherson, Terrence Moronic, John Messer, Frank Micas, Vincent Monticelli, William Monahan, Paul Moneymaker, David Montgomery, Lawrence Moore, Daniel Moore, Thomas Morrison, Richard Murphy, George Murphy, Thomas Nagel, Kevin Neely. Robert Nelson, Chris Nicholas, Donald Nickel, Thomas Knock, Howard Norton, David O'Neill, David Oliva, Donald Olson, James Osborne, Michael Otto, Alan Popacek, Sammy Pentecost, Peter Philhauer, Michael Phillips, Olaf Pokrayatz, John Pollitt, Ronald Postawa, Frederick Poesiak, Michael Prestia, Alan Price, Randall Prusaki, Francis Robideau, Kenneth Rakowski, Barry Reddington, Richard Regnier, Raymond Reich, John Reed, Richard Rhodes, Stephen Racine, William Roach, Larry Rodman, Jimmy Rogers, Carl Ropos, Terry Rosenberger, Kevin Rosinski, Donald Rosolowski, Robert Schaub, David Sheffers, Gerald Schneider, Philip Seiler, Warren Seymour, Robert Shanahan, David Shipley, Frank Siegfried, James Simpson, Roland Sisk, Leo Sywick, Kenneth Slider. Raymond Smith, James Smith, Kenneth Smith Peters, Michael St. Germain, Robert Stafford, Jerry Stanley, Dale Staton, Frank Stevens, James Stevens, Daniel Stork, David Surgis, James Swartz, Ronald Tosted, Willis Taylor, Joseph Taylor, Howard Terrell, Joseph Tome, William Toner, Grady Usray, Esley Varvel, Lee Vickers, Arthur Wade, Jimmy Walker, James Washburn, Daniel Watkins, Russell Weber, Frederick Whitticus, Charles Wilkinson, Raymond Wisniewski, Glenn Wojcik, Richard Wood, John Wooten. Alvin Woobles, George Zabilka, Leonard Zaleski, Ronald Zoig. VVMF's In Memory program honors those who served in Vietnam, returned home, and later died. A ceremony is held each year on the site of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. to induct new veterans into the In Memory Honor Roll. To learn more or to nominate your Vietnam veteran to be honored for their service and sacrifice, please visit our website.